I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone number 1. We're meeting at City Hall Council Chambers. Today is May 13th. It's 3:33 p.m. Calling this meeting to order. Thank you everybody for being here. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Who's going to help us with roll call? Ms. Ayala?
Mr. Justin Heather.
He asked to be excused this afternoon.
Mr. Jesus Esparza.
Present.
Mr. Francisco Mata.
He's also, I think he's on business travel.
Ms. Vanessa Guerra.
Present.
Mr. Jose Ceballos.
Here.
Mr. Wilfredo Martinez.
Also asked to be excused this afternoon.
And Mr. Juan Caballero.
Present.
There you have a quorum.
Thank you very much.
Mayor.
Motion to excuse.
Chairman.
Thank you. Motion to excuse the 3 board members that are out this afternoon.
Second.
It's been seconded by Ms. Guerra. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? None. Motion passes. Okay, we're on to item 4. Citizens' comments. Citizens are required to fill out a witness card no later than 5:45 p.m. Those can be found here on location. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. No more than 3 persons will be allowed to speak on any side of an issue. Speakers may not pass their minutes to any other speaker. Comments should be relevant to city business and delivered in a professional manner. No derogatory remarks will be permitted. I don't have anybody signed up or anybody here. Nope. Okay. So we still have time for anyone to sign up. We will move on to the next item. Approval of minutes for April 8th, 2025. Those are in your packets.
Motion to approve the minutes as stated.
Motion to has been made by Mr. Caballero. Any discussion? I'm sorry, is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Esparza. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Motion passes. Thank you. So we have, this meeting's probably going to be one of our shorter meetings. I'm glad for that, so everybody can go home early. We will give some updates, and spend a few minutes talking about our workshop for those of you that weren't there, do a little bit of a wrap up on that. So we have standing, item 6, standing status updates, Zaragoza Street public improvements. I think Edward's got the latest that he wants to share with the board.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Edward Ochoa with KCI. Yeah, so just a quick update on the Zaragoza Improvements Project. Good news is the project is pretty much complete. The stone caps and the vertical brick that we were putting on the seating wall, has all been placed already. I do have some pictures I can show you all very quickly, just some real quick pictures that we took just a few minutes ago. Can you all see that on your screen here too?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. So these are just some quick pictures. Can you see my arrow also? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's the stone caps. The stone caps have been placed. There's the stone, the same paver stones that were used on the ground we used on the side there. So that's just a quick view there, and I'll just kind of go through them quickly. There's another view kind of in that middle step area looking west. This just looking down the whole, kind of on the west end by Salinas, looking down the street to the east. This is kind of in the middle of the block looking east towards the disappearing step area, and then I'll get into this is kind of the little garden area that we ended up, it can be used for a garden area in the future. I think we talked about that. We put some crushed granite in it now, but it does have a water irrigation. It has an irrigation bubbler that's capped off, so in the future, if the city ever decides that they want to go ahead and plant something there, we can just come and tap into that. But you can see there, all of that's placed. There's just kind of a standing back and looking at the diagonal steps that we had there. Another view there. And then this is the last one that was on the corner. This was a little tricky to put in. You can see it's kind of a fine pointed angle, but, they were able to get that all cut up and put in well. And there's that seating wall. That's just a little bit of a closer look. Took some picture there. It looks like people are enjoying stepping on top of it already. It's been used just like this project. I think every step of the way of this project, as soon as we built something, it was being used. So it looks like it's serving the public very well. I have some pictures from last week when they first started putting the stone cap, and somebody was already sitting on like half of it, and the guy was building the other half. So it's working very well. So for the most part, everything's pretty much complete. What I would like to ask, I guess, is if there is going to be some kind of a ribbon cutting or something like that. The contractor asked about that because I think they want maybe one last opportunity just to go in and give it a good little wash, right? So if there's something that's been discussed on that, just let us know.
Okay.
So that we can coordinate with the contractor, maybe have them out there the day before.
I mean, I usually lean on Ms. Martinez to talk to the council member and let them coordinate that. I'm sure that this board would be supportive of that.
Definitely, especially since normally we do a groundbreaking, the community expects there to be the official,
Right,
start.
sounds good.
Turning over the project.
Edward, if you don't mind, on this topic, is to cover maybe some of the workshop highlights, since they were, in one note for me on the landscape, I think the board's aware that there's gonna be some tweaking from what we've learned on vegetation and mostly just on vegetation. The rest is really just a little more industrial upgrades on boxes and that kind of thing, but there is a report in your package, item 11, gives you a summary of the landscape architect that was brought in specifically to take a look at the vegetation that was used, and has given us some recommendations both for this Zaragoza and also for future, right? So we brought her in to kind of help us with future understanding of what we should be doing on the landscaping side. So the one thing of note for me, Edward, is she's recommending a tree well of 6 by 6, which is, I don't know, some of them are a little smaller than that. I know the ones that don't have a grade over it are of that standard, so it's really a few of them that I don't think we need to go back and modify those, but I think for the future is just covering that. But if you all had an opportunity, that was something I wanted to make sure this board was aware of, but I'll let you speak to the highlights.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to look for my notes on the materials workshop. I can't get to them on my iPad here real quick, but generally was just kind of getting some feedback from everybody. I think we kind of agreed on some of the stone colors and all of that to be what it is. We wanted to get some feedback, of course, on the landscaping. Going back to that, we did have a chance to review what the landscape architect provided as comments. Certainly all of the comments were great, and we can take how we implement those comments on some of the projects moving forward also. In some areas, like in the tree grate location, minimum 6 by 6. In some areas of the Zaragoza project, we were pretty limited on space to make something like that work. If you think about it, you have if you put a tree grate that's 6 by 6, theoretically the tree's in the center, which is a 3-foot offset, so then that doesn't leave.
Yeah.
And when you're having to meet a 4-foot ADA space, it doesn't really leave a lot of space. So
Right.
we had to really think outside the box on Zaragoza on several locations to make things work. But generally speaking, yeah, I agree with that concept. We can look at how we implement that on Iturbide.
Working off memory, for me, the other thing that the board needs to be aware of is we did have a discussion about the pavers on the actual drive lanes, how they're not really keeping to their original color just because of the dirt and the tire marks. So there may be a recommendation that comes back on this next project about changing that or accepting a darker color instead of a lighter color, since they're gonna look black anyway. So we did learn a little bit about that. Edward also covered potentially coming back with an alternate on how we do some of the thermoplastic on the walkways.
Correct.
So he's gonna have an alternate with doing them with paver markers, or paver changes on the colors so that we can delineate walkways. I'm trying to just think of what other highlights that the board might be aware of. We talked fully about industrializing our utility boxes. We also, so everything's gonna be concrete polymer, both on electrical and irrigation. And then also, trying to find a solution for the oval water meters that don't perform well with pavers. We lose the levelness of it. So, Eliud very quickly after the meeting shot back an option on a more rectangular, meter box with meter cover that I think will work better. So I think generally it was landscape and just making sure we cover that. The last thing was just the poles. We talked about meeting the ribbed historical concept.
Yep.
And looking at options to produce that kind of.
Yeah, so some of the feedback that I want to give there, we visited with a contractor that actually bid, or they were putting their bid together for the original whole 9 block concept that we submitted the first time. And in that concept, of course, we had those street light poles on there. He did come back that those street light poles were about $22,000 each installed. The ones that we had spec'd out, right? And that was the full pole, which was the pole that had the banner on the side, it had the lamp, it had the floodlights on top, and then the eye hole for the string lighting. So that pole all in, he was at about 22,000, which I think was quite high. So we need to revisit, maybe looking at that concept, and again, some of the feedback that we took, kind of getting a decorative pole. Councilwoman Cigarroa also provided something that she had found in another city, so we're looking at pricing that out. So, we're kind of putting all those prices together so that we can come back with something here soon.
Okay, so for the board, we have poles with lamps, and not in all the blocks, right? But we have poles that have lamps on them, and then we have poles that are used for just for string lights, which is probably a lesser of an investment, but just so you're aware, that's going to be a high-ticket item when we get this bidded, and so we'll need to be able to work through that cost and try to bring it to a reasonable level, I guess, in what we spec out.
Correct. So what we're gonna do our best on is, try to come up with the items that we, feel are needed, right, for the project. And then anything else that's extra, kind of like you just mentioned, the crosswalk, kind of a paver's crosswalk idea would be, we'll put all those in as additive alternates. So the same thing would be with the street lights. You know, we can maybe put together maybe 2 different light poles and get additive alternate bids for them, so that it gives some flexibility, when we're selecting the contractor, which one the TIRZ board wishes to go with. So we'd like to see if we can help the city and the TIRZ board kind of expedite getting this project out soon, so.
And for I guess everybody here, the board members, this is going out the same way as the last one, competitive seal proposal, so not a straight bid, right? So that's what's allowed us to maybe fine tune our costs when we decide on which contractor we've selected. So, and this contract's been very cooperative for this last one.
Absolutely, yes, agreed.
Any questions for Edward or on Zaragoza or landscape or anything? For anybody else that was there, is there anything that we should highlight from that workshop?
They did speak of the green that you wanted, you guys.
Oh, yeah, to match the green, so I think there was a general consensus in the room, that's an important, thank you for bringing that up. So we agreed that the city has green poles and that we should try to honor that standard.
Yep.
And I think that's an easy one to honor. I think for me, it's the nature of the pole, right? If
Sure.
we introduce a square pole, you look around, we don't have square poles in
Correct.
downtown that I can remember, but.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I mean, the painting I think would be pretty easy to do. You know, if we can't find a manufacturer that sends it to us in that color, we can just paint it, you know, have the contractor just paint over it with the right kind of paint, metal paint or whatever it is. So,
Okay.
yeah, we've got that in our notes too, to implement into the plans.
So I'm gonna memorialize that when we get to item for the board, Nick, we can vote on that, either way it goes on 9, so you guys have direction. So, if something happens, like, well, we never voted on it,
Sure.
'cause we haven't voted on it.
That's fine.
But any updates on the AP Zaragoza street improvements, or I guess the remnants of the project with AP?
Yeah, so, the last communication was just a few weeks ago, I wanna say maybe 3 weeks ago. At that time, AEP said, we received everything from the city, they had everything ready to go, they sent it over to their scheduler,
Yeah,
and they told us 4 to 6 weeks from that date.
so we're still in that window.
We're still in that window. I called and tried to get an update on that, see if they actually have an exact scheduled date for us, and, didn't get any response before the meeting, but I'll continue to check on that.
All right, sounds good, thank
But
you.
we're still in that window of 4 to 6 weeks for the scheduling of when they would come out and begin their work for the upgrades.
Sounds good. Let's see, I'm gonna leave wayfinding for when we cover it in item 8. The transportation set aside update, I want to thank all the city staff and the MPO and everybody, TxDOT, who helped us get this, agreement, before council and work through. I know it took a lot of our legal department as well, city's legal department, a lot of work behind the scenes. I know it seems easy, right, but there's a lot of work, so I appreciate everybody. I just got a copy of the city project development agreement with the TIRZ. We will send everybody a copy after this meeting. I think that came in this morning or yesterday, so I'll share that with everyone. That basically is the same type of development agreement we have for the other phases, which makes the city our project manager, and where we basically accept procuring using city standards and everything else that comes with that. It would be the monument, I'm gonna defer that, also for, I think I have an item here, if not, yeah, it's item 7. Murals program, I don't have an update other than our unveiling got, postponed because of weather. I'm glad they made that judgment call, cause I wasn't really looking. When they sent the email, I checked on my weather channel, it's like, it's gonna storm. And it did start raining, so that was a good judgment call. I know they were trying to set a date for this week. It may end up being Friday. I'm not sure what the latest is, but I did see Ms. Bruneta out trying to set a new date for that. So we will keep you all posted on that. Project plan and finance plan, I don't have any update on that. That's still as a draft and has not been presented to council for final approval. Webb County participation on the TIRZ, we did have a subsequent meeting following our city council, executive session meeting or visit. We met with Commissioner Jaime, last week, and, essentially we're ready to start putting the terms together, and his advice was to go ahead and write something up and come back with the proposed terms. The 3 primary proposed terms relate to the level of participation of the county, the board membership, and the term, right? So how long are they gonna participate, for what, how long, for what level, and then the board composition. So we will, I'm hoping that with everybody's help, we can go back to them maybe next week, Ms. Martinez, Mr. Morales, and I think we should meet with the city manager, make sure everybody's on the same page. Hopefully we can release something that everybody agrees is a good start. Everything working well, it'll be on the Commissioners Court agenda, and then come back to council for official ratification. But that's the latest on that. Any questions or on the updates? And Ms. Martinez joined us at that meeting, so appreciate you being there. Thank you.
Just one question. So I don't believe we're gonna make the executive session item. Did you want me to still talk to the city manager? You wanted to
I
have
think
an
we should
internal-
talk to the city manager first and,
Yes.
and everybody be on the same page on where we are and
Okay.
how we're going back.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna jump into the action items. Item 7, discussion and possible action to approve technical changes to the Iturbide exterior monument sign and amend the contract amount with SEC signs and lighting. I just shared something with you all that came in this afternoon. So essentially, because we took that cabinet, the digital cabinet out, and we added a few things, I can roll through what was changed, but essentially, it's adding a second it cabinet to face the back, since right now it's basically facing north. So we would have an it cabinet facing back, that adds $2,300 or so. Adding LED lighting bands on the vertical beam. So that's in addition, that's probably our biggest cost. So now we're gonna have these bands going up and down the beam, and also having the ability to change colors. And then upgrade the 8 lights at the top. If you remember, it has, I don't know the technical term for that, but it's got spires. It's like a circle with spires on it with colors. So we added light modules to that. That added 4,232, and then the module to be able to change the lights on those LEDs, that added additional cost. The last item is an item that I've been talking about, which is we want to finish on the concrete monument itself, the vertical concrete that comes out. There's a footing obviously, and then there's something that's above ground. We want to make sure that the finish there is a fine finish, nothing that needs to be troweled. So we don't have the mix design for that, and they were asking me this week if I had it. I still don't have it. So hopefully we can treat it this way. I'll lean on the city to see if that's an appropriate way to do it, but to add a contingency that could cover that. So essentially what it is a self-consolidating concrete mix design. So when you do these kinds of pours, they're cast in place, and they usually use in technical terms, a vibrator that goes into the cavity of the cast, and that usually consolidates the concrete. What happens a lot of times is that finish is not exactly perfect, and then you end up troweling it, and that trowel mix actually in time it starts chipping off. And you can go look around town, a lot of them are chipped off, and so we don't want to do that here. So long story short is he added a $5,000 contingency to that. It's still under their original price. This is an original order of 112,063. With the contingency, we're at 106,866. This vendor has not, hasn't been a notice to proceed on them, which was one of my concerns a couple of meetings back. So we just got this pricing last week, a week and a half ago, and then the revision came in today. So I'll take any questions, or if any of the staff has any comments, we'll hear those. Is the board okay with understanding the changes?
Okay with the changes?
So the change is how much more?
It's less.
Oh, it's less?
Yes, it's a
Okay.
savings, because the cabinet was pretty
Oh,
expensive.
it's over here. Oh,
Yeah,
where
it's-
is
it's-
it? What are you looking at? All right.
Yeah, so the only thing from what you have in your binder is that I added the concrete. I told them add the concrete mix, so, for the contingency. It may not be that, it probably will be less than that. So taking out that digital cabinet, which was like 22,000, created a huge savings, so we were able to get these upgrades within that.
And we're not losing any features, right, by not having the cabinet?
The only feature we would lose, the messaging feature. But in reality, the window of the cabinet was probably gonna be about 32 inches. It was gonna be pretty small, even though the cabinet might have been 48 inches. So the visual part of it was gonna be pretty small. So I think actually it was a smart thing to pull it out, because at the end, it looked great in design, but when you really thought about it, it was gonna be pretty small for the passenger vehicle traffic flowing by.
I'm okay with the change. I like it.
I'll entertain a motion on this item.
I'll motion to approve the modifications to the Iturbide monument sign as presented, to the revised price of $106,866.
It's been moved by Mr. Caballero. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Esparza. Any additional discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I just have a comment. Are we tied to that amount? Is that the specific amount, or we just want to leave it broad enough where if it changes a little bit, we're not tied to that number?
I mean, technically, and I'll lean on some of the city staff that knows the internals of how you do this. I mean, we could leave it at 112 and, you know, it's not gonna exceed the 112 and not make any changes, but I would want to articulate the technical changes to the sign, so we can go back to the vendor and say, these changes have been approved. So, Tina, how do we normally, do we wanna change the amount when it's less, or do we wanna leave it and?
Yeah, and so this is, again, I think right now, you can motion to approve this request or these changes, and then we can bring you the final numbers, because I'm trying to see how
Okay,
these
so
numbers
just
add up.
approve the changes as presented?
Yes,
I can
at this,
modify.
at this time.
Okay, do you want to modify?
Okay, modifying the motion to, again, motion to approve the modifications to the City of Laredo Iturbide monument sign, as presented on the letter, with the deletion of the electrical cabinet and the addition as listed.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Esparza again. Any additional discussion? All right, there being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any against? None, motion passes. Thank you very much for that. Item 8 is discussion and possible action to approve the final downtown way signing map graphics and initiate production of signage and amend the contract term with FSG Signs to accommodate, to accommodate design modifications. So this is gonna be probably the same thing. The only thing that I have to update on what was presented, so we're essentially adopting the final version, is the only thing on La Posada, I would want it to say hotel, just like the Rialto Hotel, La Posada Hotel. And this is if somebody, I'm sure, we know it, right, it's a hotel, but it may not be as obvious to someone else, so. That's really the only change that I would say. And we probably wanna just do this, one final time, is I checked the directions on the arrows, and I didn't bring my printouts, but essentially the arrows, each of these signs represents one location. So that's why you see in like, you can, I didn't bring my notes for this, but like the one at City Hall, the map doesn't change, what just changes is the direction, so, I'm trying to figure this out. I think the one at City Hall is the first one.
Yeah.
St. Peter's going that way, and Later Theater for the Arts on Agustin, so, just so the board's aware of what it means, it's basically representing a location.
I would also just comment that on, well, maybe let's say it over here. Center of the Arts, it's Laredo Center of the Arts, the official name. I don't know if it.
Oh, you know
It's
what,
just
they have the
abbreviated.
marking, I hadn't seen that. So it does tell you, you're at City Hall, like the first one says, you are here. But one thing that I'm gonna do, just to be safe, is I'm gonna print an actual mock-up. And then before we could do it at shop drawing level, but I think it'd be good to do it now. Print it at an actual size, and then we can, we'll have it in a place where we can all look at it. Because, I don't know, maybe a little bit small. The good part is that all the artwork is done, which has taken us quite a bit of time.
Estamos en Laredo, ¿no? But if we're gonna just to be consistent.
Anything else? So, Ms. Martinez, can I print it and bring it to your office so people who want to look at it can look at it there?
Yes, I think that would be.
All right, sounds good, so I'll do that. I'll make a motion to accept the final design, subject to any minor corrections that don't change the concept of it.
Second the motion?
Seconded by Mr. Caballero. Any additional discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? None, motion passes. And this also doesn't have a notice to proceed, so really the contract term does not have to be dealt with. Item 9, discussion and possible action to provide board direction to the project management team and design team for the Iturbide Street Improvement segment projects, considering materials and selection workshop and recent landscape architect recommendations. Is there anything that the board would like to make a record from we discussed earlier? The only thing that I would want to make a record, and just pursuant to our workshop, is the 6x6 recommendation where possible, is to meet that standard, and secondly, to match our existing poles and the color green that exists in our downtown. And if there's a need to change it, that would come back to the board. That would be my two items on this. The only other, and it's not really related to Iturbide, it's more in Zaragoza, is I would like to see if we can work with the city staff to help us address the recommendations for Zaragoza. So that we can bring in she's recommending crepe myrtles on the tighter spaces, so we can get that done as soon as possible. But, and Edward, do you need anything else memorialized in today's meeting for materials? So this would be any action that, because we didn't take any action at the workshop, any action that you would need.
Any action specifically?
I give two items for me.
I mean, those two items are important. I guess those are good. That gives us some direction on, you know, we can do some of those minor tweaks. You know, certainly, again, picking a lamp, but, you know, we don't have specifications on one other than what's already in our submittal. So we would need to do some research, or unless, you know, somebody provides. So
Probably do that before you put it out, I guess.
we can. Oh, there was a discussion during the meeting about maybe considering putting conduits up in some of the light poles. So,
That's a design issue, so that needs to be.
yeah, so we need to look into that.
So Mr. Mata it's a good recommendation, I would support it, is to go ahead and rough the conduit, where we may need electrical, especially in places where we don't have an electrical box or a lamp with an outlet. I would support that as a third action item on this.
So, so just a little background on that. Along Iturbide, we do not have street light poles.
No, they're only string lights.
So we have string light poles, right? So the street light poles, the ones that I was talking about that are a little bit on the high side of cost, Andrea was just reminding me that
Those are
mainly on San Agustin.
Okay.
So it's on kind of on the upgrades of the San Agustin portion of it. There would be one at the intersection of San Agustin and Iturbide, but as we kind of discussed in the materials meeting or the materials workshop, that we kind of need to skip the improvements as San Agustin crosses, or Iturbide crosses San Agustin, because San Agustin kind of has the priority in the way of grading and certain issues. So maybe we could just come back and address that when we do San Agustin, right? Those two light poles on the corner. But the string light poles were just simply going to be a square or rectangular-ish pole that just goes up in the air and then
No
has
power.
Well, we weren't going to have power to every single one of them, because the idea is that pole is just meant to hold. It has an eye hole on the top that you hook the string lights to, and of course, string lights are daisy chained, as they call it, right? And it's going to be powered from its original source.
Okay.
Not at every single pole. So,
Yeah.
just we did a little more research and thought about that after that comment came up, and so we're like, well, do we really want to look into doing that? Because that would certainly add some cost. I'd have to check with the electrical engineer.
But we have lamps at the tree wells, right?
Yes, and all that's already in the plans. So our plans already include conduits throughout the entirety of the street to provide power to the tree lamps in the tree lights. So there's conduit already running down the street, right? But to sit and put power from that conduit run, let's call it, going up to the light poles and then up to the trees, we just need to think about that. I mean, that would add some cost, and then it would add some cost to the actual string light pole itself. So, you know, again,
Well, what Mr. Mata was saying is that at the base of that pole, we could prep. So you run a conduit to the electrical, wherever the electrical source is, and put a, not to actually put the outlet yet, but in case it needed, it already is rubbed in, you just run the wire when you need it. I think we would wanna do that to the nearest power source on Iturbide. So
Okay.
you have probably an electrical junction box that you're
So-
running power to the lamps, right?
that's
So
correct.
you would identify a nearby poles, or if not, you have a run to the poles. At the base of the pole, it would be set up so that the roughing conduit is in place for future.
Okay, so maybe roughing in from the pole box to the nearest pole, and then just rough it up into the pole column.
You don't even have to power it. If you never need power there, you don't wire it, you can just,
Yeah, but just have the conduit rough
yes,
in.
so you don't break the sidewalk
Okay.
in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we can look into doing that.
The last thing is to clarify, for the board, whether the intersection, I know you covered this, the intersection San Agustin and Iturbide, how you were gonna break that, or how that is part of, San Agustin, correct? So you're gonna cut off, cause I think you probably wanna cover that, cause this board probably,
Sure.
I think all the board members that are here weren't privileged to hear that, so if you wanna explain that?
Sure, and I apologize, I don't have an exhibit to show for that. But if you all can just kind of visualize, Iturbide is 5 blocks. So the Iturbide project will start on San Dario and go west to Flores Street. But on the third block of the second block, I'm sorry, of the 5, San Agustin crosses. And so originally, going back to how we originally planned to do all of this, is we set up our plan set so that all 9 blocks were gonna be done at the same time, right? That's how we first bid it out. But since it got separated out, then we just did San Agustin, we did Zaragoza. So now that we kind of, Andrea and I kind of looked at San Agustin and Iturbide and where they cross, we're doing some improvements to San Agustin to regrade the intersection so that it's a more walkable street, right? If you notice how San Agustin is right now with the bricks, it's very steep and it's not as walkable, and there's been some concerns about the curbs and the sidewalks. And so long story short, our San Agustin design is regrading, resloping that whole street. So if we build, and that incorporates the intersection with Iturbide. So if we don't build the San Agustin intersection, but we build if we don't build San Agustin, but we build the intersection, that causes some drainage issues along San Agustin. In its existing condition. I don't know if I
Yeah, cause you
worded that right. My
Yeah.
brain's going like this. And I'm
so
trying to
the water
spit it out.
won't be able to flow
So
to the drains because you're higher, you're elevating the intersection to
So-
begin with.
Correct. So the idea, again, going back, the idea was we were going to build Zaragoza first, then San Agustin, then Iturbide. So in that concept, when you build Iturbide, San Agustin, the plans? Okay, great. Let me see if I can, well, I might have to unlock this again.
We have 2 drains inlet on Iturbide that are basically taking in all that water coming off of San Agustin.
If I can get some assistance to unlock the screen lock. But, yeah, so the idea there was when we were gonna do the San Agustin project, San Agustin was gonna be built in its entirety through the intersection, and it incorporated a drainage upgrade throughout the whole intersection. So, a few seconds here, let me see if I can get that. Pull up the plans here. Well, I have the plans for Zaragoza. Let me pull this up and then I can at least point to the location, if you don't mind. find them.
You could also use Google Earth, maybe that, if you can get in there.
You could probably bring up just.
Andrea found the Iturbide plans, I'm sorry. So these were the plans that we had put out originally for bid for Iturbide. We haven't updated these yet. This would be a good sheet to show right there. Let me zoom into the intersection. So if you can see that this right here is a picture of the intersection of Iturbide and San Agustin right here. And so you can see what we had done here was we showed a match line that says from here this way you need to look at the San Agustin plans, and from here this way you're looking at the Iturbide plans. So again, when we split up the plans into three separate projects, the idea was that San Agustin would be built before Iturbide, and San Agustin has, the upgrades on San Agustin have grading changes and drainage changes. So once we started putting our heads together and saying, okay, if Iturbide goes first, what does that do to the intersection of to San Agustin, right? And so once we started thinking about it, Andrea and I said, yeah, we can't build that intersection unless you do the improvements on San Agustin, because it starts to push the drainage water, and then it's going to create some ponding issues along San Agustin. So,
So your termination for Iturbide would then be the match?
so the
point here?
termination, so what we're going to suggest is that the termination kind of continue right there on Iturbide. And let me go to the previous block sheet.
And right there, the match line.
Yeah, the match line is actually right here. So then on the previous block, if you see here, the match line for this, and you can see here as an example, we were planning on putting some grade inlets here. We have a trench drain that's over here, and there's some grade inlets that are on the other side over here. And there's a grade inlet actually underneath the word here that's on the San Agustin plans. So this match line is probably going to have to push out maybe a little bit further, because we can't build Iturbide with the curb line along here, because the existing curb is a little bit further, it's a little bit closer. So if you can kind of visualize, we're going to end up building Iturbide, but we've got to stop at a certain point that we can come back and match up to the existing curb line, or then there'll be a real funny offset transition. So it's just kind of like a sequential of work. We just need to work that into the Iturbide plans that, again, weren't accounted for because the idea was to do San Agustin second. So, I mean, no big deal on our part. We need to fine tune this particular intersection so that that match point works correctly, if that makes sense.
Okay. I just wanted the board to understand that.
Yeah, there'll be a little bit of effort on our part. We'll have to discuss with the board, you know, on doing some of these fine tuning so that we can go ahead and rebid the project out. But we're already kind of looking into that and seeing how we can get that accomplished.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, so I have from my notes, really, it's the pole action to memorialize the interest to match the pole color, which is green, to build the tree well at a 6x6 where possible, and then to roughen the electrical from the nearest electrical pole box to a reasonable number of poles. Leave it up to KCI to determine that. And then the last thing is just to acknowledge that Iturbide will have termination spots east and west that will not include the intersection as the engineer defines in his plans. Make a motion that we, for the record, establish that that's the direction that the board's given the design team. It's been seconded by Mr. Esparza. Any additional discussion? Comments?
Andrea just brought to my attention one more of the notes that we had, I don't know if it warrants to add it, but there was also a discussion about the parking kiosks and maybe removing the parking meters along Iturbide and incorporating a kiosk similar to what was done at, the Center for the Arts. I'm
Okay.
not sure if,
Does the board want to entertain that in this motion?
Can you share what you mean by parking kiosk?
um, yeah, so,
Is that the scan, pay scan?
It's basically a centralized payment system that has a kiosk where you actually, your transactions being done there. I know there was other discussions about possibilities.
Does it change the cost significantly?
well, I don't know about significantly, but it'll certainly add to the cost. We were not involved with the actual pricing of the kiosk that was incorporated into the Center for the Arts, because that was done through the traffic department. We provided the plans for the restriping of the angled parking, and they removed the parking meters, traffic did internally, and then they purchased and put that kiosk. So I don't know what the exact price is. We can get it from them. But yeah, it'll add the cost of the kiosk itself, I guess.
So from a design standpoint for you, that would mean you take out the meter being in the plans, right?
Correct.
It's,
Yeah, from a design standpoint for us, I would say that that's negligible
Okay.
for the most part. We would just add some notes that the parking meters would be removed and returned to the traffic department, and then there wouldn't be anything else in its place. Currently, what we show, since we're changing the exact location of the parallel parking, we have removed parking meter store and then replace parking meter where the new parking stall is, right? And the new parking stall may be 5 or 10 feet off from the original, right? Because we're redoing everything, but it was kind of a remove and replace concept. Replacing back the current meters that are the coin credit card meters.
do you all know if those kiosks are power operated or are they?
So I would just
Battery.
suggest that maybe we, present this to the traffic department like we did when we made the modifications to San Agustin and kind of get the approval from them. Because, this would be removing city property and adding another fixture, just to make sure that the fixture is similar to the other system that they're already using. And again, maybe answering some of the questions, how beneficial has the new system been? And is there any maintenance or deferred, maintenance cost to the city?
Right. Yeah, that's well noted. The one thing I do want to make a record is that I think, I'm not speaking for everybody in the room, but generally everybody was interested in seeing these kinds of options as opposed to a coin meter. Maybe not, maybe I misread the room, but I'll just say that. But also, if they're going to do that, if the city is has plans to put kiosks instead of these coin meters, they probably need power, right? So we would want to get that information.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure how
Well-
that particular location.
Is-
And the existing meters that are in certain areas, because I have used some of those, they don't offer just a coin option. There is already an
Coin.
app option. So, and they are powered because there is something that's keeping track of the time that you have it. So
Power your
there,
battery.
so there probably is already some sort of, power.
Yeah.
Yeah, not sure if it's some service, but I don't know. Honestly, from what I recall from the Center of the Arts project, that was a one isolated project. I don't think the city has removed any other meters and added these kiosks. But again, I know for that project, you all presented it to the city approved it because
Yeah.
that would be a major change in some of the systems that they're using.
And is that run through our budget?
Our budget?
Mhm.
So the last one was not.
Okay.
Even though I think this board offered to cover that upgrade for the Center for the Arts kiosk, the traffic, whoever paid, it wasn't this board or this.
I think the
TIRZ.
only cost that was covered was the engineering
The
design.
design of the
The
plans that
design
we
of
provided.
it.
But they covered the striping and the kiosk and
Yes,
the
sir.
removal of the meters.
Yes, sir.
Because that was a council directive that was presented to council as an option.
That's fair. I think we should take Ms. Martinez's advice and run that request and then see where that takes us. Are you all agree?
I would agree, yes.
Okay.
And I guess just to help me understand, so the kiosk would be located like on the corner or something, and then you would have to walk to it and then walk away to where you're going?
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
that how?
That's currently how it's happening. I tried to go through Google to see if the kiosk was there in the street view, but it's not. It's got an older picture.
Okay.
But my understanding is the kiosk is kind of in the northwest corner of the Center for the Arts. So it handles the parallel parking on the north side and on the west side of the block, right?
The diagonal.
It's the, yeah, so it's kind of in that
Covers
corner, so
both
people
streets.
walk this way or this way, right, to it. So if we incorporate a kiosk in such a manner, I mean, we've had several discussions, you know, in and out of several of the meetings, right? But we strategically have to find a spot, you know, for example, maybe, you know, on the San Agustin intersection, like a certain here, and so that people covers this block and this block. And I think that's typically how you may see it in some cities, like when you're talking about a standalone kiosk location. But there was also discussion about, you know, the app idea, right? You go to several cities like Austin and there's a traffic sign that you QR code and you scan it and, you know, it pays and you put your number and your license plate and you walk away and, you know.
I would imagine that you'd have to have pretty prominent signage, right, to advise people that there's this kiosk, because if I drive up and there's no meter, I'm like, oh, free parking, awesome. You know, this is
City
great.
vehicle or
You
personal
know,
vehicle?
personal.
If I'm not mistaken, we included some general language in our plans and traffic was gonna handle the final language, but, if you park in the diagonal parking, if I'm not mistaken, there are
It gotta be
signs that say,
go
pay
over
at
here.
kiosk, yeah,
Okay.
something like that. But, yeah, okay,
All right,
we'll
so
go ahead and
we're-
note that as.
We will
the
leave
way-
it at those 4 items.
Okay.
I'll just restate them one more time. Pole matching at green to match the other city poles, trenching at 6x6 tree well. Rough-in electrical, prepped for several poles, not all of them, but several enough to have power on each side, on the rough-in side. And then Iturbide, acknowledging Iturbide cut off, at least while we're doing Iturbide, will be a match point away from the intersection.
So real quick on the 6x6, you're just saying that you want to standardize the use of a 6x6 tree grate
Where it's
wherever
possible, where it doesn't impede.
That'll
you
be
know.
kind of the standard layout, and then
I mean,
everything
if you
else.
see it problematic, then you could, I mean, it's, you know, you can address it, but I would hate to ignore that recommendation,
Sure.
you know?
Absolutely.
So, it's been moved and seconded, I restated the items to memorialize on behalf of the board. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? None motion passes. Move to adjourn at 4:26. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Esparza, any discussion? None, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? None motion passes. Thank you very much.